Welcome to another edition of Be the Change Georgia, where we amplify the voices of the inspiring business leaders surrounding the B Corp and social impact movements across the Southeast to help you learn how to build your legacy at the intersection of people, planet, purpose, and profit. Today, there are more than 8,000 B Corps in over 80 countries and 180 different industries, unified by one common goal: transforming the global economy to benefit all people, communities, and the planet. If you want to learn how to plug into our purpose-driven business community alongside the inspiring leaders we feature on this show, check us out at blocalgeorgia.com or on Instagram or Facebook at blocalgeorgia, and we'll hope to meet you at our next event. Today's guest is Shavonn Richardson, founder of Think and Eat Grant Consulting and a newly certified B Corp. Shavonn brings a truly unique perspective to the world of grant writing, having sat on both sides of the table as a nonprofit leader and as a grant reviewer and funder. On today's episode, Shavonn shares her personal story of nonprofit leadership, her professional journey into the entrepreneurial world, the importance of strategy-first grant writing, and how to navigate today's evolving funding landscape. If you're a nonprofit leader struggling to write grants or win grants, or you're just simply passionate about creating positive change, you won't want to miss this episode. Let's dive in. Shavonn Richardson, welcome to Be the Change Georgia. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Great to be here.
It's great to it's fun. It's like the culmination of so many things where like you're finally certified. We're finally getting you on the podcast.
I mean, all the things. And we started talking, 20, I'm forgetting the year, but I feel it's like 3-4 years ago when you were first emailing back and forth.
Yeah, it was one of those, I think we just added the web form to Be Local Georgia's website, which for everybody checking out our website, I promise we're going to update it soon and do a whole lot of, we're going to put new blogs out. But anyway, we just put the form out there and you sent it and I was like, hi, I'm Nathan. And and what you don't know is once you meet me, you become a B Corp. So no, super cool. And you went through B Lab's level program too.
I did.
That's amazing. It's been cool to see, and we're doing the Bridges pilot right now to the Russell Center. So it's cool to see some of the years of kind of intentional growth by B Lab also start to bear fruit as well. It's been, I don't know, just fun to watch, and glad you were a part of it.
Yes.
So, by the way, how does it feel to be a B Corp? It's exciting.
It was like running a marathon, and you get to the end of the race, and you're like, oh, it's over. It's like it's official. And then you get to celebrate. And so being able to have the support of B Corp with all the resources to promote it and share, that's been like the game changer, right? The celebration part of getting through the process. So that's where we are now. So it's all good.
It is a weird moment too. As somebody when I'm not wearing my B Local Georgia hat who does B Corp consulting, you work and towards the end, it's so intense. You're emailing 2 or 3 times a day. Hey, I need you to answer this. And then it just kind of ends and you're like, I'll miss you.
Yeah. That was me to my consultant. I was like, wait, you mean we're over? Are we breaking up? And my consultant was like, no, we're not breaking up. I'm on your team. We're just not going to talk 2 or 3 times a day like we do. So.
But it is so intense though that you can see why for people are how do you know? I'm like, well, I've done 50 of these. So you become really good friends. And I had clients where it's 7:00 at night and I have to go back into my office and because they're out on the West Coast or something, let's knock this thing out. And it's so yeah, you become really, really close. And so, yeah, it in a weird way, it facilitates some really awesome relationships and introductions and connections. And so, yeah. But it is intense.
Well, I tell everyone that I talk to, I would not have been able to do it without my consultant. Rebecca Coffey was my consultant, and I write grants all day long. We'll get into all that, but I write grants all day long. I'm used to very intense writing processes with the federal grant space. I do this all day long. I've done all of those MBE applications that require a lot and certified women owned and all that stuff. That does not compare to this process. So no matter how smart you are, or how good you think you are, it does not replace a consultant who has done this, like in your case, 50 plus times, right? Like you need that eye, because you're going to interpret things in a different way than the consultant would. So the consultant needs everything.
Yeah, no, agreed. That's what we were talking about before we went online too. Yeah, I had one recently that, like, it might be the one I'm the most proud of, where I'm like, we did it. But they would have never done that without me. So anyway, shameless plug for my for-profit business. But anyway, like, let's get into the matter at hand of, like, because I think what you do is so interesting, and like the more especially even for Be Local Georgia this year, we've gotten into doing, like, we got the grant from B Lab to do the Bridges pilot. We got a match, but again, that was
Mhm.
more of a one-off because it was a super
Mhm.
simple, and like the average grant writer struggles with this. And there is
Mhm.
a reason that your business exists. But before we get into, like,
Mhm.
common errors and everything, I want to unpack your founder story a little bit too, because
Um,
this is my favorite part, and it's probably, I would hope it's our listeners' favorite parts, because we get so many interesting ones. I told you on the plane call, like, you're like top three. So I'll
that's
just
an
shut
honor.
up and let you kind of tell how you fell into entrepreneurship, because I think it's a really cool story.
Man, I appreciate it. Top three, that, that's a big one. But I definitely have a very interesting story. And it kind of started with tragedy, right? So I lost my grandfather to prostate cancer. Um, these things happen, and we were just so distraught from it. And instead of saying, "Oh, woe is me," we decided to do something about it, and we formed a nonprofit organization, Blue Flowers Org, all about supporting men battling prostate cancer and their caregivers. So, you're thinking Black men's health, when you're thinking social determinants of health, when you're thinking all of that stuff, caregiver resources, resources to pay for medication, resources for doing different things. That's all we did. And so, I'm supporting my family run nonprofit, doing all the things, literally pick the shade of blue in the logo. And of course, as a nonprofit, you have to look for funding. And like many new nonprofits, who could afford a grant writer? So I became the grant writer. And the way it happened was I realized, like, all through college, like I was in every essay competition that I could get in to put my way through school and win scholarships. Like that's how I funded my education. And so I already knew I had a strong writing background. And so I said, hey, let me try this. And I was really good. Got just about everything we applied for. And so I noticed that there was a real skill there, and then kind of started honing my craft, reading books, like becoming an expert in what I was doing. And so continued that. And then at the very same time, I was working at Bank of America Foundation. I was in the MBA leadership development program. And then at the end of the program, it was like, okay, where do you want to go and where do you want to do? And so I was already kind of tipping my toe in the nonprofit world. I was like, hey, I'd love to work at Bank of America Foundation. So when the opportunity did come, I was responsible for a $1.2 million budget, really distributing it to local Atlanta nonprofits among grants and sponsorships. So being in that position and being in that role to be able to review grant applications, to be able to be in a room when they make decisions, it was a very enlightening experience to learn how that was. It was also frustrating at the same time because I would read applications and I would get so frustrated, like, you were so close, you just missed these few things. But of course, in those positions, you can't advise in that way. And so being in a very unique position, which very few people are, to have the experience of being a nonprofit leader out here, getting the dollars, doing all the things, building the relationships, and then also being a grant maker. So seeing what the criteria are, right? Because foundations have one idea, nonprofit leaders have another idea. And so having that knowledge, I was in a very unique position to see there is a gap here. Like,
Mhm.
nonprofit leaders are not truly understanding what foundations mean when they say this or say that. And so I kind of planned to go out on my own to be that resource to help nonprofit leaders really understand what it takes to move the needle. And so that's when I started thinking in grant consulting in 2016. Next year will be our 10-year anniversary. I can't believe it. That's a whole story within
And for
itself.
any entrepreneur, like, that is like, I'm like 4 years, and like the grinds, the ups, the downs, like that is a like congratulations moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Every year is a congratulations moment
It
that we
is. It
survive
is.
and continue and grow. So
Yeah.
congratulations.
That year 5 was a big one because they say, most businesses don't make it past year 5. I think year 7 was a growth year, and then coming up on year 10, it just blows my mind. I'm like, I cannot believe it. A lot of businesses don't make it to 10 years, so I appreciate that. So that's how we got started. There's more as far as like the beginning start, but as far as my founder story, that's how Thinking in Grants came to be.
That's amazing. It's super cool. I mean, well, I'm like super cool that your grandpa died. Like, no,
I
not
know,
that
I
part.
know.
But I don't know. There's a weird like you were on the path you were supposed to be on, and all those things had
Yep.
to happen for it to connect.
Hmm.
There's when we talk about grants, there's like the I don't know, whatever, and everybody's you want advice as an entrepreneur. You throw a quarter, you can hit some advice, and not all of it's great. Some of it
Yeah.
is, some of it's a yes and, but there's
Hmm.
this like whole thing out there of like like well, you can't rely on grants; it's not sustainable. So like, how do you work with clients on like striking? Because I mean, I've gone through that where like there's years where
Hmm.
I have we get a big grant and it's an amazing this is my for profit, or they want to do something with a foundation, they want to do a B Corp project, and they'll bring me in to do it, and those years are fantastic. And
Hmm.
then the rest of the years, maybe if I don't get a grant, it's like, how am I going to make
Hmm.
payroll? And so, like,
Hmm.
how do you advise, some of your both nonprofits and for profits on like
Hmm.
finding that balance?
Yeah. Yep. So the most, and this question is not on all grant applications, but the most difficult question to answer is, what is your sustainability plan? And the most common response is, we'll just apply for more grants. Wrong answer. So I think people need to understand, and sometimes people approach it at grants like it's just free money, right? That you can just reapply for, and you'll get more money, but it's not. So you have to have a game plan, and you have to operate like this is the last grant you will get, and how are you going to use this grant to create additional opportunities going forward? You have to consider it a blessing if your grant is renewed, if you reapply and you get it again. You're operating under grace, because sometimes, let's say if you get a grant 3 years in a row, sometimes they'll say, you know what, we're not going to fund you this year. You didn't do anything wrong, but we're not going to fund you this year because we want to fund different organizations too, right? We have limited dollars, limited resources. We want to fund others. So thanks, but no thanks. You guys are amazing, but we're not going to fund you this year. That's beyond your control, right? So I think a lot of people, learned this during COVID, right? Especially in the fundraising space as well, when things change, right? You couldn't fundraise. Some shifted to grants, and now we're seeing the difference even now. What's going on in with the um, presidential administration, right? The impact that that's having on grants, and so now this is another shift. So I always encourage organizations to have a sustainability plan. Also, you can't just apply for grants like it's a hobby. You have to have a committed, ongoing commitment to not only building relationships, but also being strategic about finding the right grants and applying for grants all the time. And so, and that's why our clients at Thinking Grants, they retain our services because we are like their pit bulls 24/7. It is our job every day to look for grants and write grants constantly. And so, in order to have consistent cash flow coming in, you have to dedicate that type of attention to grants for it to be worthwhile.
Wow. Now I'm also like, this is what it reminds me. Last year, I had, I think it was last year, might have been the year before. I had Joey Womack on the podcast from Goody Nation.
Yeah.
He was sharing these things of like, if you're an entrepreneur, you're not doing these things. You're like,
Yeah.
and right now I'm like, so I'm not going to get those grants I just submitted, the applications I just submitted.
Well, you never know. You may, right? You may. But, I think grants aren't funded as often as people think, even the best grant writers. We can write the best grant with all the things and doing all, and sometimes it still doesn't get funded for other reasons that are just unknown to us. That has nothing to do with it. So that's why I say people have to dedicate the time and energy to pursuing grant opportunities. And a lot of times it's not the fault of nonprofit leaders. Sometimes they just don't have the time to do all the things.
Yeah, where you're just like, or it's day before, and you're like, submit. It's like
Yeah,
you're just as good probably not submitting it,
exactly.
but it's interesting though, because like we started this episode talking a little bit about just like like the beauty of like a B Corp consultant of like get the expert, but like
Yeah,
it's like doing your taxes, it's like doing bookkeeping, like
yeah,
certain things you just probably shouldn't unless you like if I had your background and I was running a nonprofit, yeah, I'll write my own grants. But this
yeah.
is something that more nonprofits need to look at as like an investment. And again, I'm not here to like, I mean, well, we're here to like
Mm-hmm.
promote you and like, but
Mm-hmm.
not like I didn't plan this plug, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's worth the investment. Would you rather have 80%? I don't know your price, but like, would you rather have
Mm-hmm.
80% of $100 or 100% of no dollars?
Exactly. And what I tell nonprofit leaders, I know like we're all trying to save money somewhere, right? And some people will say, well, I can just write the grant myself. I'm a grant writer. I'm a great writer. And I'm like, I'm sure you're a great writer. I'm sure you're amazing. I'm sure you won a big grant 4 years ago. But you have to think about where the greatest value of your time lies. And what ends up happening is you your head is down writing grants, and grants are so intensive that that's all you're doing. When as a nonprofit leader, now I'm looking back up, you should be out there building relationships because that's something no one else can do. Like only you can do that, right? Only you can tell your story, be out in the community, do all these things. And then when the grant opportunities organically open up through relationship building, which to me is the best way to find and win grants, relationship building, then you can tee it up to your grant writer and say, hey, I saw Betty Sue at this luncheon and she encouraged us to apply. Here you go, right? And then let them do the work that you cannot delegate. So that you can delegate, right? You can delegate grant writing, but you cannot delegate relationship building. So I would say take that energy that you wanted to dedicate to writing grants, which is often after hours. So now you're not resting, right? You're writing grants 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, right? So
I'm
not
lucky
a good,
that early
yeah,
in the night.
yeah, yeah. So you're not functioning like you should as a nonprofit leader. So if I had to advise someone, I would say get out in those streets, build a relationship. You cannot delegate that. That needs you. The grant writing, a subject matter expert could take that ball and run with it. And that is the best way to approach it.
That's yeah, no, again, more things that are hitting home for old Nathan over here. But again, also this is like I think it's interesting, like, I mean, we talk on this podcast too, sometimes grace to learn and find mistakes. Like this is our first big year of like for Be Local Georgia, like really like
Mm-hmm.
let's go find some grants and grow the
Mm-hmm.
organization and maybe be able to support some sort of part-time paid staff and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So learning as you go in is kind of fun. I'm glad you're in the B Corp community now though. So we might be employing your services soon. Um,
Happy to
what,
be here.
yeah, what would you say is like when you're working with a client or somebody, like if you were just to like guess, like, hey Nathan, I could probably take two guesses if you looked at an application, like what are the most common mistakes people make when writing grants?
Mm. I'd probably say so. The sustainability question for sure. Um, I'd probably say, and then this is part of how I got started. I didn't share this part, but my firm is called Think in Ink Grants for a reason because the biggest thing I observe is that nonprofits are not strategic before they write grants. They just sit down, they just throw some words on the paper, they submit it like an hour before it's due, and they think they're going to win. The biggest issue that I see is instead of sitting at a computer writing the grant, push the computer to the side. Sit and be strategic about your programming because when you're clear, like, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is who we're going to serve, these are our outcomes, this is how we're going to be able to measure our success, we're going to do these things, and these are our stakeholders, and these are like, have all of that stuff kind of like discussed and defined before you even write. Because then when you go to write, that clarity is going to be very transparent in your writing. So another thing that I do, I'm also a federal grant reviewer. So a lot of times I'll review grant applications and I can always tell the organizations that did their homework, like did that thinking, right? That's why we're called thinking ink grants, because the thinking part is like that strategic work, that consulting work. If you have that in place, inking, actually writing the grant is super simple because you've already thought it out and all you're doing is put it on paper. And so when you're not taking that step to be strategic, doing a logic model, sitting down, really thinking through everything, it shows in the application. And for people like me that have been reviewing for a really long time, I can read an application and I can know they did not think this through fully. They didn't think about the challenges. They didn't think about, how we're going to overcome the challenges. Other people in your industry that are doing the similar work. How can you work with them, or how can you partner, or how can you build upon the work that's already being done? It's just a lot of short-sightedness that people just tend to overlook because they're just thinking in one way and they're thinking about, okay, let me just throw something down on a piece of paper and hit submit.
And even if you have a great idea, I mean, at the end of the day, the whole part of the application and the review process is, you and your role at bank, but you're a steward of that money in the foundation. Like, you have to feel very good and confident that you're not just like literally setting money on fire because you think that they might know what they're doing. If you can't convince Shavonn as grant reviewer what you're doing, then probably not going to happen.
Exactly right. I see people try to write proposals off a concept note. Oh, we have a concept. This great thought. Like, we just, took a napkin and wrote it down. That's great as a start, but you got to flesh that out. That is not like something you just take and just write down. And I just see people have this concept and they're like, I want to do this. And then they just start writing. And I could always tell when the work hasn't been done. So that is the biggest mistake that I see folks make.
Now, after that last bit, though, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm a little bit more confident in the one I just said. So, going back and forth here. You touched on this earlier, and I mean, we don't have to go deep down the rabbit hole, but like this year has been an interesting year with like nonprofit money, foundation money, if it's government related, if it's private foundation, if it's corporate foundation, like I guess what's a landscape right now? Is money drying up? Is it still there? Is it, are we, is it just kind of a play? Is it like by the sector of where that foundation is located, of what kind of being whatever careful with all the things that we get struck by lightning now, if we say, like, I'm curious to get like your insider perspective on like the rapidly shifting landscape in this space.
Yeah. The money is drying up. It is literally, you had a bucket and the money, I can't even say it's transferring or shifting. Those are not the words I would use. It is literally someone coming into the pot. They're taking a handful of money. They're taking that hand and putting it behind their back, and they're like, this is mine. And you have what's left. That's literally what is happening in a federal space. Grant opportunities are disappearing. Some of them are reappearing and looking very different. I know a lot of people have had called for the foundation space to step up. I've seen and heard different things about the foundation space stepping up. The problem that I have is that it's really hard to replace federal dollars. Like, the federal government has the biggest budget out of everyone, right? So you can't like replace those dollars with foundations. You can try, like a lot of them have increased their giving rates, a lot of them have, made changes. So I love to see that, but is it ever gonna exactly replace the loss of federal dollars? No. And so what we have is an extremely competitive market with a lot of organizations fighting over a few dollars. And so now more than ever is when you need a person like me or my firm, a skilled person to guide you through this process, because it is very difficult and you have to be strategic. A lot of our clients are colleges and universities, they're large nonprofits, and they're municipalities. So we have the experience and knowledge of how to pivot around these things that are happening. And we are guiding our clients around these changes, right? So I would not. This is not the time to go it alone. It's not the time. It's not the time to play around and say, "Oh, well, let me try." No, it is out. It's very difficult out here. It's super competitive. You have to operate very differently. What you were doing a year ago is not going to get you ahead now. The grants that you were winning a few years ago, you're not going to win them now. This is a new territory that you have to have a person who can help guide you through the process that has the experience to do so. Not somebody that thinks they can. I know a lot of grant writers that are probably like not even writing grants anymore because of the market. But we are still writing grants. We're still guiding clients. We have not experienced any type of major impacts because of things that have happened. Um, but yeah, it's tough. I'll just be honest. But with the right partner, it is doable.
That's awesome. Good. See some optimism. Some. Um, no, I mean, it's interesting because yeah, it's been a tough. I mean, it's been a tough year for everybody, and I think everybody's kind of in survival mode. You're seeing even like from a business standpoint, I'm seeing more and especially in the B Corp community. And maybe
Mhm.
again, that's probably I think especially because I'm in this world and so I see it more. But I'm seeing a lot more like collaborative efforts of like
Mhm.
resources, cross selling, cross
Yeah.
promoting, and I'm seeing it in the
Yeah.
nonprofit space too, like
Yeah.
collaborative events. Like we can do one event promote three organizations. I mean, we're doing one. I mean,
Mhm.
we've always kind of done this one anyway, but we're doing one on
Mhm.
Tuesday. Well, I guess it's
Mhm.
gonna be out in 3 weeks. So we just did one.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, like where it's like, okay, we have one budget for the same event now, but we can cross pollinate three different networks
Yep.
and get our brand out there, and it's just kind of more cost effective. So yeah, I think people are getting, I
Mhm.
don't know, people are more resilient than we give them credit for.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it's still it's still been, what are we? It's June 6th. We're recording. It's still been a first 5 months.
Yeah. Yep.
um, as you work, I mean, and obviously grants and nonprofits and some for profits, like you're working at the intersection of like social impact, entrepreneurship, equity. Like we can end it. You already sent us kind of out on an optimistic note, but what gives you hope right now? Like what are the things that kind of energize you and give you spark? And
Mhm.
I mean, I'm one of those. I'm a naturally optimistic person, but I'm curious to hear
Mhm.
what is when Shavonn wakes up in the morning, she's like, it's going to be a great day, or sometimes doing what the rest of us do, where you're like, put the smile on. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, part of it is what you touched on, the fact that people are coming together to get the work done. Um, that is the way to do it. Even if we're talking specifically about grant applications, like I said, it's so few dollars. Um, the way to get those dollars is to partner, right? To have multiple organizations on an application. So I'm thrilled to see folks coming together and getting the work done. We've faced adversity before, right? And we have persevered, and I think we will continue to persevere. So the fact that folks are pulling together to get it done, and I'm also appreciating the passion behind the work. I feel like that there's more passion. I think sometimes when you start to lose something, you get more passionate about like, wait a second, because sometimes I think we forget why certain laws and certain things were in place. And so when they start kind of being chipped away, you start thinking like, wait a second, I wasn't alive during the civil rights movement, so I didn't know what it was like before. Like I don't know what it's like to go to a black only water fountain, right? So you don't have any understanding of why these laws and rules are put in place. You have no understanding. You just know it's there, so you just live and you exist. But when things start getting chipped away, and you're like, wait a second, like wait, like I'm now having more of an understanding and appreciation for some of these things because now they're being ripped away, they're being torn apart. Our protections are being torn apart. So I'm loving seeing the passion behind protecting some of these things, and going out and doing the work, and knowing that there's going to be certain populations that are going to be affected, right? And so to see people step up and say, I know dollars are missing here, these people who are experiencing who are unhoused, these people that are over here doing this, I'm going to have to step out, whether it's financially or projects or working together to help these folks, because these are vulnerable populations. That makes me happy and brings me joy.
yeah, you start. I mean, it's kind of like when a hurricane hits or something, and you see like
Hmm.
the most beautiful parts of mankind come together, and
Mm-hmm.
to either survive the storm, then recover from the storm, find supply. And I think you're seeing the true resiliency of people and coming together. And you're right, like the community. And again, maybe we're just biased because we spent a lot of time in Atlanta, and I think the community is super special.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm seeing it, just in the greater B Corp community of how can we, everybody's kind of looking out for each other of like, I've done it for a couple of people, like nonprofits where like I find out you're struggling, like, let's go raise some money.
Yeah.
I probably need to raise money like that for myself sometimes, but there is like, you feel that need. Everybody's kind of got each other's back right now. That's in this space. Look at us, optimistic.
I love it.
Good work, everybody. But yeah, I mean, the work's not going, like, it's just kind of like, what are you going to do? Are you going to roll over and play dead, or like zombie apocalypse happens, you're just going to lay down and die in the street, or are you going to try to survive and fight? So
exactly.
It's kind of, that's great. Thank you. I needed that. It's a Friday. We're recording this on a Friday too. Shavonn sent me off into the weekend happy. I'm going to go pick up trash now, Shavonn.
I love it.
I was probably going to do that anyway, but well, thank you so much for coming on. Like, this is really cool. And again, like, one of those subjects, like, I've written grants, I've never really thought strategically about any of this. So like, I'm assuming a lot of people are going to listen to this and everybody's taking notes, but even if this was just a conversation between the two of us that we're recording and releasing to the world, I learned a lot from talking to you. So I'm very grateful for your time and talent and your treasure. So thank you so much.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, anytime. And I look forward to, I don't know, I'll figure we'll talk. We'll get some good
we will definitely talk.
I've got the vision. So maybe you can help us get there.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shavonn.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another edition of Be the Change Georgia. We're grateful, as always, for the opportunity to serve you with this content and grow this incredible community of purpose-driven B Corp leaders. If you haven't already, we would be grateful for you to rate this show wherever you get your podcasts by simply tapping the number of stars you think it deserves and sharing it with a friend. This helps us get the word out and continue to use our collective influence as a force for good. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the help from our production team at Chat with Leaders Media. Learn how you can launch your own podcast to grow your business at chatwithleaders.com. Thanks again for listening, and now go be a leader worth following.